Okay, welcome to Michael Coughlin Art. We are going to be taking a look at some basics of perspective. These things are great to understand, whether you be a beginner or you already know something about perspective. This will help whether you're drawing from life, from your imagination, or combining them both. So they're simple things, but they often get confused because in art, we tie a lot of these things together, but you don't need to. They can operate independently of themselves. So, the first one, horizon, is where the land meets the sky. That's the only definition of horizon. And we'll look at a couple of different versions of that right now. The basic is right here. You got your, let's say this is water, and then up here, let's say this is the starry sky. Where's the horizon? It's right here. That's where the land meets the sky. Now, there could be a picture that doesn't have any horizon at all. That could be, let's say I'm floating out in outer space. And here is the sky. There is no point where this land meets the sky. If you were to maybe go a little bit closer to Earth and you saw the curve of the Earth down here and you saw some of the countries, where's your horizon? It's right here. Another version of horizon is where there is no sky. Let's say you are in a hole. You've dug a hole, you're completely in Earth. The sky would be up here somewhere, and all you see is land. There is no horizon in there. If you're looking at a house, people, and you're inside of the house, right? And maybe here is the roof. Maybe this is the wall down here. You're in a hallway. Okay. Here's a door at the end of the hallway. There's technically not a horizon in this because there's no place that the land meets the sky. If you were to use X-ray vision, maybe you could X-ray this and then you could see the horizon out there. So there is a horizon, but you're not seeing it because of the fact that these are all solid objects. Okay, so if you used X-ray vision, maybe you saw mountains out here. Okay, maybe there was a window right here where you could see the mountains out of the window, so you would see a little bit of the horizon line there. Now, those are a few different examples. In art, we tend to like that three-quarter horizon line because usually the halfway point is not as dynamic. So sometimes you might have the horizon line right here lower in the page, and this could be your river, something like that, and then these could be your mountains. So keep that in mind. That's the only definition of horizon, where the land meets the sky. Now, that is not eye level. Sometimes it's the same. That's why these things can act independently of each other, and sometimes they match up. And we're going to look at eye level next. This is the second point that you have to understand in order to have a better understanding of perspective. Eye level is simply where an imaginary plane that extends at the exact level of your eye. It doesn't matter where you are in space. You could be in outer space. You can be under the ground. You could be on a ladder, on a mountain, floating in the ocean. There's always going to be an exact level where your eye is. If you have a hard time of understanding the eye, think of it as a camera lens, okay? Think of there is a cell phone camera that's being held, and you can picture what that screen would look like compared to what the center point of the actual lens is. Where that lens is, it's the eye level. So let's take a couple examples. Like for instance, let's say there's a person standing on a huge ladder right here, and here is the person on that ladder. Where is their eye level? It's right here where their eyes are. Let's say they're looking at their ladder is so big that it actually comes above the level of the earth. Okay, here's the earth down here. They're out in space. That's how big it is. The horizon level is down here. Their eye level is up here. This is the horizon. That's their eye level. It has nothing to do with each other in this case, okay? When is it the same, though? It is the same when you're standing roughly on a plane that is long and flat, a large flat plane. Let's say an example would be you're standing in the middle of a flat desert. Okay. Now, is that actually a flat plane? No, because the Earth is curved. But for our purposes and for the viewing purposes, what you see is actually a flat plane because you can't observe the view or the curvature of the Earth at that sort of level, right? So if you're somebody who's standing here, let's erase this example to see where this person is standing. Here is this person. Okay, here they are, and they are out in the desert, and here is their eye level. Okay, this is the actual plane of the desert. Okay, so maybe there's a road here that they're standing next to. And in these art pictures, that is where your vanishing point, or we're not on that yet, but that is where your eye level matches up with the horizon. We see a lot of these because we tend to be standing on the ground level. But the vanishing point and or the horizon and the eye level will change in relation to how far above the earth you are. If you go on a really tall mountain and you look out straight, okay, so this person right here is on a tall mountain. Here is the height of the mountain, and they are standing here. You're going to observe that your eye level is actually slightly higher than the horizon line. Okay, will be where the horizon. What does that picture look like? They're standing on a mountain. The horizon line is going to be lower than where their eye level is. Okay, here's the river. You can try this yourself. Go in a really tall place and you'll see the horizon line is actually going to be lower than your eye level. Because don't forget about our previous example, which was if you're out in space, if let's say this person is a spaceman and he's floating out here in space, his eye level's here. Remember, the horizon is going to be way below his eye level because he's going to be floating out in space. Okay? So you have to remember those two things are not exactly tied, and they're only tied if you're on a large flat plane extending out into the distance. Another one could be the ocean. Okay? If this is all the ocean water, then your eye level and your horizon line are going to be the same. Now, let's see how this operates with a thing called center of view. Remember, these things are independent and only sometimes they are related. So, if you're thinking about the center of the view, let's say you have your camera, that is a very straight line coming from directly where that lens of your camera is pointed. Usually in art, you see this classic picture where they're all matched up more or less. You got your horizon line, you got your eye level, and then usually if you were looking at the lens of the camera lens is going to be in the center. Well, that's not quite the center. It'd be in the center somewhere, okay? How do these change? They're not always matched up. Let's look at this guy that's on this ladder out here that's going way into space. If this person was now looking their eyes or their camera lens, doesn't matter which one you understand, it might be easier to understand a camera lens because your eyes have peripheral vision, which doesn't make it a real clear bounding box, and it's a little bit more foggier to understand. So if you want to think of it as a camera lens, then you can think of it like that. Let's say this person is on this ladder in space, but he is looking down, and somebody made a big table down here, okay? And there's some objects on top of the table. This person is looking down at this. There's a large table that they set out, and there's a few things. The center of this person's view is looking directly down towards the table. It's not his eye level. His eye level is still here, and it's not the horizon. The horizon is still here. What is this person's art actually going to look like if he were to draw what he saw? Or what is their picture going to look like? Well, you are going to see the table here, right? And then you're going to see the objects. He's looking down at them. So if you want, you can do your 3-point perspective because this is further away down there. Okay, he is looking down at these objects. So this part's going to be a little smaller and lower. And even if you don't use 3-point perspective, you'll still get the idea. But the point is that this is what his art looks like. It doesn't tell you really that his eye level is out in space because he could be looking down in a camera and then zooming in on it, right? The horizon would be up here somewhere. The horizon's not even on the picture. This is just land. There's no land meets the sky in this picture. Okay? So that is where his center of view is. If he was looking up, remember, center of view you can imagine as tilt. Tilting doesn't change the eye level. If this guy starts to look up, it doesn't change his eye level. His eye level is still there. But if he's looking up at, let's say, some objects up here, okay, what is his art going to look like? It's not changing his eye level. But since his eye level is lower, he's going to see the bottom of the objects if he's looking up. Okay? Let's see if there was a mushroom right here. He would see the gills of that mushroom because he's looking up at it. Okay? Gills of the mushroom. So if he's looking down here at the table, then he's not going to see the gills of the mushroom. He's going to see like this, the underneath part, right? Same mushroom, but he's looking up or down at it. So remember, think of center of view as a tunnel that's going out directly from your eye right towards wherever you're looking, okay? It's not the same. Sometimes they add up. If they're all the same, that means they're all the same. Your center of view is the same as your eye level and as you're looking straight, right? And as the horizon. They can match up sometimes. So, but remember, the thing that most people miss about perspective is they realize that they don't always have to match up. Let's move on to the next one. Vanishing points is the only thing that you have to understand about vanishing points is that as something gets further away from you, it gets smaller. It doesn't matter if it's going up or if it's going down. Where is it getting further away from? Remember, a camera lens is the easiest way to understand that, and your eye can act as the camera lens, okay? That's the only thing that you need to understand about vanishing point. If it's further away, then it's smaller. Sometimes they relate to the other ones, and sometimes they don't. Let's say I am looking at my classic 1-point perspective scene with my railroad tracks and my power poles on the side, right? And they get smaller as they go. Same thing with here. And they get larger. Okay, here is the railroad track. Okay, that's my classic 1-point perspective scene, right? So, vanishing point is right here. It just so happens to match up as my center of view because I'm standing right in the center of the railroad tracks. But here is another object that's over here, and it's a square. It's a cube that's over here, and it's going to have different vanishing points, okay? It's going to have different things. This one is going to be vanishing right here. So this is 2-point perspective and 1-point perspective on the same scene, and that you can absolutely have that. you can have tons of different vanishing points on this scene because each one of these objects is going to have their 2-point perspectives, okay? So these are getting smaller. Yes, they are going to vanish here, okay? If you're on the long flat plane, otherwise known as if your eye level and the horizon are matched up. So in this one, you have your horizon and your eye level and your center of view more or less matched up. You would have more up here, but that gets into our fourth one, which is crop, okay? You have either tilted your camera down for your center of view or you've physically cropped out in Photoshop or in some post in your drawing, you've taken that box and made it smaller. So that's crop, but let's finish up on vanishing point first. So the key thing, remember this box is further away. When it's in 2-point perspective, let's say the box is over here, okay, it has those 2 vanishing points, which would be like this one's going to be larger than this one. This one's going to be larger than this one because of the fact that these parts right here and right here are closer to me. So if it's closer to me, obviously it has to be larger. Like here's a good example with this bottom. Okay, they're going to vanish over here. Same thing with this one. It's going to be, this is smaller than that because it's further away. Vanishing point, then, because this is smaller than this, it's going to make a vanishing point. Okay? Every object can have its own, even if you're on a 1-point track, right? Say there's buildings while you're on that 1-point track. These are going to vanish towards this second point over here. So these relate, vanishing point relates to the object itself, and it also relates to where you are because the ones further in the distance obviously are further away from you. So we're just going to look at a couple different examples of vanishing point from different people's perspectives. First one is going to be the person that's on the ladder and they're out in outer space. Here they are up here and they're on a very tall ladder out in space. Those vanishing points, they don't have to be on the horizon line, people. It relates to the object. Remember, the simple rule is if it's further away, then it is going to be smaller. So, for instance, let's say this person is looking at a cube that's floating out here in space. Okay? That cube is just about at their eye level. What are they actually going to see if they were to draw this and take a picture of this? They are going to see this cube because it's at their eye level. Their eye level is right here. So the vanishing points for this are here and here's 1 and here is 2. Where's the horizon line? The horizon line is way down here, not even on the picture. So that's how you know that the horizon line is only the vanishing points. Again, if you're standing on that long, flat plane, that's, on the land, okay? That long, flat plane would become the land. So that, folks, is where the actual horizon, you can see, picture the trees here, but he's floating way above the trees, or the countries on the map, but he's floating way above them. So each thing gets its own vanishing points because still these sides are further away from him, even though he has nothing to do with the horizon line whatsoever. Now let's take a look at if this person was then looking down. Okay, let's say they are up here on the ladder and they're looking down onto that scene and they're looking at a box down here. They're mostly going to see the top of it because they're looking down at the box. So what would their art look like? It depends on how further below the box was than them. If it was completely lower than them, like they were flying over it, they're not going to see the bottom. They're only going to see the top. Okay? This is all getting covered. If you could see through it, it would look like that. You can make it like into a hole or something. That's going down into space, right? So they're looking completely down on it if there was a hole. Okay? That would be if they were looking down. So we saw if they were looking at it, and then again, if we were looking up at the box, it's going to look like this. Which sides are further away? Okay, this side is further away. This side would have to be longer. I'm not really doing a great job, but this would be the longer, and then these are going to vanish towards the same point there and there. This is the longest one. Okay. Now these sides, this is going to have to be smaller than this. And then this one's going to have to be smaller than that. So that is vanishing point, completely separate. Sometimes it's going to be the same as the other ones. Now the crop is well, I don't know if it's confusing or not, but you need to know it because this might make it so that your center of view is not in the center of the page. Let's remember that example where the spaceman was looking down on the table, right? He was way up here on the ladder, and he was looking down at a table that was on Earth. Here's the table that was on the planet Earth. So remember his eye level's here. The horizon line is where the Earth is, but his center of view, where he's looking down, would be right in the center of this picture right here, because that's how he's viewing the table. What's he going to see? Well, he's going to see all of these different soda cans, or let's call them water. Don't drink soda. We'll call them water cans. Soda's not good for you. And so he's going to be seeing all of them. So you'd say, oh, okay, we get that. So the center of view is always in the center of the page, wherever the person takes the picture. No, not necessarily, because you can do a thing called cropping. I can then crop this picture to be right here. Okay? So this soda can, water can, is actually extending off of the page. Let's say this is space over here because you can't see the land. Or we'll give it a little bit of land, a couple of mountains. Okay. So look at the center of view was right here, but it's not anymore because of the fact that he cropped it. So the center of view is much, much closer to the top in this. He didn't change the tilt of his camera. All he did was change the crop of the page. So it's an important thing to note, so that way you understand why center of view isn't always the center of the picture. It's always going to be the center of your phone's screen when you change that view. Okay, you're not changing anything above and below, but you can change it later on. It's like a post-editing type of thing that you can crop something out. So just to recap here, keep in mind that these few different things, horizon is simply where the land meets the sky. That's the horizon. It can be in many different places. If I tilt my camera, same eye level, okay? Changing now only the center of view, I can turn that horizon line way up here on that page where it was lower before, because all I did was went. Same thing, eye level, or different thing, eye level, then is simply where that eye or that lens is in space. Okay? Maybe it's completely relative to the other objects, right? If you have an object down here than your eye level, you would say, oh, well, that's a higher eye level because it's higher than that object. Well, wait a minute, a higher eye level, this person, let's say they're completely underneath the ocean, looking down at an object, right? There's fish, there's coral, and things like that. So it has nothing to do with where he is. Um, is that a high or a low eye level if he's under the ocean? Well, it's all relative. Let's say he's on the moon. Let's say there's a planet way up here and the Earth is way down here. Okay, your eye level, all it is, people, it's not high or low necessarily because it's relative. The way to understand what eye level is, all it is that plane, imaginary plane that goes out from where the level of his eyes are. Okay? That imaginary plane. If the person was floating in the water, half in and half out, okay, there's their goggles, right? Here's the level of the ocean right there. Then that eye level is literally going to be directly at the horizon point because you're in the ocean. It's a long, flat plane, relatively, not a flat earther here, but it's relatively flat for our purposes. So that's when their eye level and the horizon is the same. But this plane now becomes the eye level. And then center of view, remember you can think how the camera tilts. It's a line that goes straight out from the middle of your lens, which would be right here, I guess, for me, I don't know. And then, okay, so it tilts up as your head looks up, it can tilt up. As your head looks down, it can tilt down. Okay? Important to note because that is when the objects on the table um, don't even relate whatsoever. They might not relate whatsoever to eye level or vanishing point or anything like that. It relates to eye level because you can decide which is below the eye level and which is above. Um, and then vanishing point, just remember, as it gets further from you, it gets smaller. It doesn't matter if that object is on the horizon. It doesn't matter if you're floating in space and there's objects all around you. Okay, like for instance, let's say here's your picture and you're floating in space and you see some sort of a large spaceship over here. It's kind of like a rectangular shaped spaceship, and here are the windows on it, like this. Okay, and then it just has some sort of, I don't know, like a spiky roof. I don't know. And this shape here, wait, we can make, let's say there's another one over here. Okay, they still have vanishing points, right? But you're completely floating in outer space. So those vanishing points aren't, quote, always on the horizon. And that's what we have to get out of our heads because if you tilt an object up and its vanishing point is going to be like if you're looking up at something. Um, and if there was a smaller one down here, keep in mind that that also vanishes. Okay. And it's independent towards the object. But for each object, it's going to have an independent points. But the only way that's going to make those points relate is where you are or where your lens is, because that's going to dictate which things are further away or which things are closer. And it's not always a strict tunnel to say that the things that are towards the center are further away or anything like that. You could have an object way over here that's very far away and it's all the way on the side of the page. And that also can be have its own vanishing points here, right? Or if it's an easier to understand, that it's like a little cube that's over here. So it can be much, and that's on the side of the page. So you can't just think, oh, the things on the outside are going to be larger, like 1 point perspective. No, they're not. That's only depending on if you're standing right in that one point perspective. So, and that's the last thing was crop, and then all crop was kind of a post editing sort of thing to show why our field of view isn't always in the center. It's literally just taking whatever that thing is. Like for instance, if I had a cube here, let's say I've got a cube, and then the crop then, folks, is just taking your picture and then just cutting where you want the boundary to be. Let's say you kept that boundary. Okay, so this is your new picture. Okay. All right, so that just about does it for perspective. Keep those things in mind. Let me know if you have any questions about that, and we'll check you out in the next vid. Thanks. Like and subscribe, please. Take care.